I didn't think much of it. It was like a side hustle, and it blew up. And within 3 years, Clever Investor became one of the biggest brands in the real estate education space.
Yeah.
And I started to scale. And next thing I know, I woke up and I had 70, 80 team members.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, this world of being an entrepreneur started to happen.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Build Your Network. I am here all the way out in Tempe, Arizona, interviewing one of the masters of the flipping houses game for all of you real estate investors out there, the clever investor himself, Mr. Cody Sperber. What's up, my man?
What's up, man? How are
Appreciate
you?
it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having me in the office, man. You guys are brand new office now, expanding, making some moves. Everything looks really great. I can't wait to see the finished product.
Thanks. Yeah, excited.
So there's a lot of things that we could go into here, man. But first, always got to go back, build a little bit of context for everybody that's listening or watching. So walk me through, let's say, 9-10-year-old Cody Sperber. What was life like? Context and, were you good at school? Did you like sports? How was the family life, home life, all that good stuff?
Wow. That's a good framing of that. 9-year-old Cody Sperber. Well, first off, am I allowed to cuss on this?
You are allowed to do whatever you would like.
I'll keep it down, but I was kind of a shithead. Okay. If I was to be blunt with it, I was very hyperactive as a kid, but my dad didn't want me to take hyperactive medicine. My mom put me on Ritalin because I was just going nuts and the teachers were having a really hard time. And my dad used to say, I'll give it to him. And then he would switch out the Ritalin for a vitamin.
Oh, really?
And send me to school and be like, I don't know why he keeps acting up. It must not be working. We got to take him off of it. And he would actually say, this is your future superpower. Don't screw this up. And he had the foresight of understanding.
What did your dad do?
He's actually my CFO. He's like two doors down. Yeah, my dad was in the education world for many, many years, in technical colleges. And he was, just in the executive side of technical colleges, helping them grow their companies. And anyways, I was really tough to manage and deal with. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were living in apartments when I was 9 and 10 years old, or real small rental houses. And so he just, was trying the best to deal with me. My brother's a lot older than me, so he moved out of the house. So I was pretty much a single kid. Okay. And so my parents were hardworking, really good people. My mom's extremely, extremely religious. Okay. My dad is not. And so there was that dynamic going on in our house. My mom was very much, trying to get me to go to church and
It was just like a community type church?
Yeah, just like a Christian church. Yeah. But my grandparents, they were Pentecostal. Okay. I think is what it is.
Like speaking in tongues and things?
Oh, yeah. I would walk into the house and my grandpa would full-blown light into tongues and, then tell me someday in the future you're going to be a preacher and a big deal in the preaching world. Right. And I would be this little kid just scared to death, like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with this information. But yeah, so as a little kid, I wasn't really passionate about anything. I didn't play sports. No. I was always really little. Okay. I didn't grow like the rest of the kids. I played some baseball and some Pop Warner football and stuff, but once we hit 8th, 9th grade and all the other kids started growing, I didn't. Yeah. And my son right now is going to deal with the same challenges because he's the littlest of all the kids in his class right now. Yeah. And he's not growing very much, and I'm like, oh man, because it was tough. Yeah. And what I did have, though, I was very sharp. Okay. And so I felt as if I wanted to be an adult as a kid because I thought like an adult.
So sharp in a school context?
No, I wasn't a very good student because I couldn't concentrate. It was like that. It's the standard entrepreneurial curse now, where it's like whatever I'm into, I'm obsessed over, and I go down the rabbit hole. And I love self-education. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts. The things that I'm not into, just I neglect to the extreme. Yeah. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. And so, but as a kid, I wasn't a good student. I cheated on my schoolwork a lot if I could get away with it, or I got caught a lot. I was also a little bit of a young hustler. I started selling candy out of a backpack. I went to my dad one day and I said, hey, I want to make money because I wanted garbage pail kid cards.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, hey, I want some garbage pail kid card. Can I have $40? And he said, absolutely not. We don't have that kind of extra money. But here's what I will do. I will give you a loan for $40, and you can sign a contract. And he was teaching me this concept of, business. And I said, what are you talking about? Just give me the $40. And he said, no, I'm not giving it to you. And after like 2 weeks of him holding out, finally I was like, fine, I'll sign the contract. What do I do with the $40? And he goes, I'm going to loan it to you, and you need to start a business. And so he had me list out things that I could potentially do as a kid, paper routes, cleaning up dog crap, that kind of stuff. And I landed on selling candy. So he took me to like a Sam's Club or whatever was around back then, and he bought me $40 worth of candy. And I took it to school, Laffy Taffies, Blow Pops, that kind of stuff, and I sold them all first day. And I came back and I gave him, I had all his money back, plus I had some left over, which was now funding. He took me back and bought more candy.
Yeah,
that whole operation lit up pretty fast, and then I just got smart. After about 2 weeks of hustling candy, I started having friends come to me, and I'm like, look, I'll give you candy.
And
I'll front it, and now I'm the plug for the candy, And so, I did that, and I got my garbage pail kids cards, and then I upgraded to a scooter and some other stuff. So I had that in me,
right?
But it was like on or off.
Yeah.
When I wanted something, I lit it up.
Yeah, it wasn't constant.
It wasn't constant, and I really wasn't ambitious. I don't want that to come across as like, oh, I had this thing in me. I wasn't an ambitious kid. I played video games. By 7th grade, I was smoking weed constantly. Me and my friends were
7th grade, huh?
7th grade.
Man.
I remember it too because my friend Tyler and I were walking, and I would stay over at his house. My parents gave me a lot of freedoms that you probably shouldn't have as a kid. And
the type of freedoms that lead to smoking weed at 7th grade.
So I went over to my friend Tyler's house and spent the night. And we snuck out, and we were walking on the golf course, and we came across this guy. I want to say his name was Julio or Jose or something, but he was like the little neighborhood dealer, and he introduced us to weed for the first time, and we smoked weed on the golf course, and it was like, that was it.
Was this like a full-grown man?
Oh, well, he was probably high school.
Oh, okay.
He was probably 10th or 11th grade.
Okay.
And we were in junior high.
So not quite as sketchy. I was picturing like this homeless dude, like
some guy he had watches
and
a trench coat on this, some weed.
I was like, man, you guys were trusting kids, man.
No, we were just. He was on the golf course. I remember that because I don't know why we were on the golf course, but that was the first time I ever tried it. And so we started doing that, and then I was like entrepreneurial in some way. So I'm like, hey, let's sell some weed.
Yeah.
Like literally, I was hustling from that perspective. Thankfully, I never really did too much with that.
Yeah. So now coming into like high school years, how did all this start to translate? Like how did how did the entrepreneurial stuff, the ability to make money when you like really put your mind to it, play into your confidence versus things like playing sports or being, really academic or anything like that?
So my dad would get fired about every 3 years. And so I moved around a lot as a kid. And if you think about like showing up at a new school, let's just call it 10 times in my childhood, I had to make friends. So I developed certain skills as a little guy with a smart mouth that was kind of funny, but the funny, I didn't know where the line was, so I also got beat up a lot. And I was always trying to make friends, and I didn't understand at the time because it was so painful and I was getting bullied and stuff, but I was developing a skill of understanding some human psychology on some level of understanding how to influence people. And then by the time I got to high school, I knew I wasn't going to be good at sports, and none of the jocks liked me. I hung out over at the smoking section with like the stoners and that kind of stuff. I was wanting to be a 9th grade history teacher because up to that point there was a teacher named Mr. Safransky that really made a big impact on me. I don't remember any of my teachers' names. I remember his because he knew how to work with a guy like me.
Isn't that crazy how you can like pull that out just from one person taking the time?
It was it. I don't think he's alive anymore because it was so long ago and he was fairly old back then. But like, man, if I can kiss that guy on the lips, I would, because he changed the trajectory of what I thought and how I believed in myself and what I thought I could do with my life.
Yeah.
And so I started going down the rabbit hole of like wanting to be a 9th grade history teacher. And then the backup plan was being a marine biologist.
Okay.
So I was really passionate and into those things. So I would read a lot of books about those topics. And my dad took me scuba diving a lot and got me certified. And so it was going to be one of those two things. But by high school, I really had no clue what I was going to do, and I was starting to panic, and I was running out of time.
Right.
And my parents were like, you got to go to community college, you got to do something. And so I went and saw the high school counselor, and they pretty much said there's not a lot of things that you should really be focusing on, so just run with the history or run with the marine biology. So I enrolled in Mesa Community College, and I went for one day. And I remember walking through the campus, and every step I took felt like 10,000 pounds because I knew I shouldn't be there. It just was not in my DNA. I didn't feel right. I was scared to death, and I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And so I never went back. I ran from that. And when I went home, and I was almost in tears, I was telling my dad, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm not passionate. These are the only two things I think I want to do, but I really don't want to go to college. And my dad talked to me and said, why don't you try the Navy? The Navy is a great path for you to travel the world and get some time to figure out what you want to do. And then the MGI Bill will pay for your school if you want to go. And because my dad didn't have any money saved for college, so like community college was like the best I was going to get.
Right.
And so I enrolled in the military. And on day one, after I got out of boot camp and I went to San Diego to get on a boat, ship, we were pulling out of San Diego Harbor. And the second we broke through the harbor, we went up and we went down, and I threw up all over the place.
No.
And I didn't know, coming from Arizona, how seasick I would get. I've been on like scuba dive boats and stuff like that, but we were never really going super far out into the ocean.
Right.
And it was mainly just walking in from the shore, that kind of stuff. And I got violently seasick. And so marine biology went out the window.
No.
And got out of the military, or while I was in the military, my dad gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Real quick before we move on, what do they do in that situation? Like, you just stay on the boat and deal with it and get your sea legs eventually?
You got to get your sea legs.
Yeah.
And so we went from San Diego to Hawaii. I threw up for 7 days straight. I was in the whatever you call it,
infirmary.
Infirmary.
Yeah.
They had me up on IVs and all kinds of medicine and stuff. I finally got my sea legs the day we were pulling in. And then you pull in, and then it resets the next time you go out. And so I had to take Dramamine every time we ever went out into the open ocean.
When you were on the boat, did you have that same or similar feeling that you did when you walked into community college, or was it completely different?
No, it was different because it was exciting. Imagine I just turned 18.
Yeah.
And I'm in Thailand.
Right.
No parents.
Yeah.
It's like
totally different world.
If you've ever been to Phuket, Thailand, you know what I'm talking about. It's
just went.
It's Disneyland for adults. And so I'm in Phuket by myself.
On Bangalore Street.
Oh, you get off the boat, and there was probably, I don't know how many, 10,000 military people coming ashore, as the whole fleet is going to Thailand. And there's thousands of women and scooters, and I don't know how I did it, but I'm driving around Thailand on the back of a scooter I rented an Eagle. And because there's no whole bar, there's nothing you can't do there. And I saw an Eagle, and this guy had it, and I'm like, I want to rent the Eagle. So next thing you know, I'm on the back of a scooter with this bird on my shoulder, and we're cruising through Thailand. So I didn't have that fear. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
But I was still just screwing off.
Yeah, right.
And my dad bought me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad one time when we were in the Persian Gulf, and we were just going in circles. I started reading it, and I couldn't put it down because it was the first time in my life I ever heard about what the difference of assets and liabilities is.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, wow, how come nobody's really talked to me about this concept before? Right. And I knew that the richest guy in my hometown when I was growing up owned real estate because he had his name on the side of a building, and it says Polak Investments. And I would walk to school by that building every single day, and I knew, because I stopped in there one day, asked him what he did.
Yeah.
He's a real estate investor. So I knew that real estate created wealth. I just thought that's for rich people, something too difficult that I'll do at some point in my life.
Right.
But that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, really got me thinking like, okay, I wonder how I can actually start to get into the real estate business. But then I put it down, didn't think anything of it, got out of the military, finally enrolled in college now that the military is paying for it.
Yeah. And
one day while I was going to college, a friend of mine named Jeremy asked me to go to lunch, and I went to lunch with him. He pulled up in a brand new Mercedes, $80,000 car,
yeah,
paid cash for it. I'm like, how did you get the car? And he's like,
This is like a friend of yours from
just a friend of mine from high school. Yeah.
So while you were in the military, he was obviously doing something.
Well, yeah. Once we got out of high school, I think he actually went to college. And while he was in college, he met a mortgage guy that got him into real estate. So anyway, he flipped a house, made 80 grand, bought this car.
Gotcha.
Pulls up at lunch in this brand new car. I said, how did you get it? And he said, I flipped a house. And I'm like, how did you do that? You don't have that kind of money to go invest in real estate. And he's like, oh no, there's this thing called creative real estate, different. And he literally penciled it out on a napkin, this concept of wholesaling, which to me was super foreign because at the time I thought you needed a real estate license or deep pockets or a good credit score, that kind of stuff. And he's telling me that there's this other world of real estate.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe him. I thought it was a scam.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you're full of crap. No way. But I took the napkin with me. And over the next week or two, I just kind of kept glancing at it, stewing over it, trying to think like, why does nobody teach you this stuff? How do I not know that this exists?
Right.
And so then this is pre, YouTube University and all that stuff.
Right.
If you wanted to learn real estate, you either went to a seminar or a workshop or something like that. There was very limited information online. There were some forums and stuff, but it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah.
No social media.
Right.
Not easy to ask questions.
This was what
2002
Okay.
ish. Yeah, 2002, 2003. And so I started going down this real estate educational rabbit hole by flying all over the country. I would either borrow money from my dad or put on my credit card, and I would go to these seminars and workshops, and I would learn, these concepts of creative real estate, wholesaling, rehabbing, seller financing, all these. There's a million ways to buy a house that doesn't require your money. You can use other people's money, or the seller that owns the house can carry back the paper. And so I started learning about all this stuff, and I started getting really excited, but it was almost like information overload. My first year sucked because I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to actually go out and do, I would literally go page 1, read it, and then I'd try to go do it.
Okay, gotcha.
By the time I got to page 8, I was so confused. I'm like, why does page 7 not lead to page 8? And then it's not like linear. Like, it didn't work like that. And so it took me 9 months of me trying to get a deal, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And by then I was probably about 30 grand in credit card debt. I probably went to 25 or 30 seminars.
Yeah.
I was just fed up, and one day I had a deal. I almost had a deal at the finish line. It was the last day before the deal was supposed to close. The deal fell apart, and I remember being so defeated that I was like, all right, real estate's not for me. This isn't going to work, and I threw in the towel. And I filled out a resume to get a job as a bookkeeper because I needed to pay my credit card bills, which were now due.
Right.
And I went and got a job as a bookkeeper.
And that was what you had gone to school for, to college
No,
for?
I was going to school for finance.
Okay.
Bookkeeping was kind of in the wheelhouse, but I mean, nobody wants to grow up and be a bookkeeper, really. Maybe an accountant, but nobody's. Well, I don't want to say that. Sorry, bookkeepers, if you're listening or watching this. But that definitely, I wasn't good at math.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Yeah. It wasn't what you were supposed to do.
I actually lied on my resume.
Okay.
I lied on my resume, and the guy said, I need a bookkeeper, and you need to start immediately. And then when I went for the interview, he said, do you have any bookkeeping experience? And I said, oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then I went, he said, you're hired. You start tomorrow. And so I left, and I went to the bookstore, and I bought Bookkeeping for Dummies. And I read it all that night. I had to get a job.
Man.
I had to make money. And so that lasted like 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
And interesting thing, I got a job as a bookkeeper for a local real estate developer. And so there was my way of quitting but not quitting.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like in the business, but I was watching the amount of money he was making because I'm running his books.
Yeah.
And I was getting more pissed off every single day, sitting in traffic. I literally had a cubicle. It was the typical nightmare scenario.
The story, yeah.
Yeah. And about 4 months into it, I'm complaining every single day to my wife, Shannon, who was my girlfriend at the time. And around that time, I had a good friend named Zach Bally, and he said, hey, I'm going to this real estate seminar in San Francisco. You want to go? And I'm like, nope, not happening.
No.
I'm not doing it. And I shut it down, and him and my wife kind of tag teamed me, and she was saying, you're so miserable. Yeah. Every day you're complaining. You're acting like a total loser right now. You're giving up, and I don't mind you going to get a job and doing whatever you got to do, but don't complain about it if you're going to do.
Right.
Be a great bookkeeper, or go
do something different.
Or go do something different. And so they kind of twisted my arm and said, look, if you just think of it as nothing more than a vacation with your good friend, just go do it. And Zach was promising me, this is different than anything you've ever seen. And I've heard that a few times, but I was like, okay, I love Zach, let's go do this. And I showed up in this seminar put on by a guy who has recently, well, not recently, probably 8-9 years ago, passed away. His name was Jack Miller. And if you look up Jack, or if you ever knew of Jack Miller, he was one of the kind of grandfathers of the creative real estate model.
Okay.
And I went into this room. There was about 300 or 400 people in this room, and all the people I bought courses from were in the audience frantically taking notes. And I remember I walked in and it instantly felt different. And I was like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what I was looking for. All the power players in there. And Jack was up at the podium telling the greatest war stories and showing you how to slice and dice income streams and create money out of nowhere and be resourceful. And after the first day, I went on break and I went to the bar to get some food, and that's where I met my first mentor. His name was Lyle. Lyle was probably 70 years old at the time, and we were talking at the bar and we just hit it off. And he was a real estate OG. Had, I don't even know how many tens of millions of dollars in his self-directed Roth, all created from nothing, all creative real estate deals over like a 40-year period. And he literally had Adidas sweatpants pulled up to like his nipples. He was all wrinkly and like disheveled, but wearing the big old man Velcro shoes, shuffling around. But he was hilarious, and he was just exactly what I needed at the time, because he taught me things that you can't learn in books. And sometimes going down, and I'm in the education business, I think there's certain things you could do by yourself through self-education and watching videos or listening to audiobooks and that kind of stuff. And there's certain things that you just have to learn on the job or from people that have been there and done that. And he taught me those kind of things. And I remember he had this little rickety whiteboard, and we would sit there for hours, and he would just show me different ways. He called it transactional engineering. And teach me different ways to approach a seller and a buyer, to put deals together in the most creative ways, so that way everybody walks away feeling like a winner, but you're finding these little hidden profit centers in a deal that most people don't see.
Yeah.
And when I started looking through that lens, and he just worked with me, I got to my first deal, and it happened pretty quickly. Like within 2 months, I got a big deal. Yeah. And it was for $40,000. It was the first deal I ever did, and that was more money than I would have made as an entire year as a bookkeeper.
Wow.
And I remember all that fight for 9 months, then quitting, then going back at it, then going to this seminar, then getting this mentor, and then finally having a breakthrough. And I remember standing at the bank getting ready to deposit this check.
This was $40,000 in profit?
Profit. Okay. And I remember thinking, this is going to change my life. Like, this is that moment I've been waiting for, a sign, a path. When you go through that evolution and it becomes real, and internally you internalize it and you go, okay, I could do this for my life, and I realized I could do this time and time again, and this was my pathway to creating the money that I needed to be able to go buy the real estate that I actually dreamed of owning someday. So I cashed that check, and I did 3 things immediately. I bought my wife a ring, because I knew if I didn't propose, I was going to lose like one of the greatest things that ever happened, and she deserved it. She put up with a lot. I quit my job as a bookkeeper, right? I actually did 4 things. I gave some money to my parents, which, supporting me in just, they needed some money at the time, and so I felt so great being able to support them back.
Right.
And then the 4th thing was something for me. And I think anybody who is fighting hard for their dreams that's listening to this, it's so easy to get caught up in just like setting a goal, going after it, hitting the goal, and then immediately setting a new goal and going after that and immediately setting a new goal. And you almost forget to celebrate along the way, because as entrepreneurs, we're always wanting more.
Right. Especially when you can compare yourself to all the Instagram people, and easily look at somebody who's like, oh, they're doing better than I am. So you diminish your own accomplishments.
Today, it's probably harder than ever.
Yeah.
Seeing other people's walls and their lifestyles.
Yeah. Their highlight reels on their social media.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, what was important to me, I wasn't thinking about like mansions and jets and all that stuff. For me at the time, I just wanted to sleep well. because for so long I was stressed out financially. And when you're stressed out financially, I couldn't sleep. My wheels were spinning constantly about my credit card debt and just these fears of like, oh man, my friends already think I'm nuts. My parents have told me now 40 times why this is the worst idea in the world and I need to just focus on college and focus on getting a job. And, I'm losing friendships over all of this and I wasn't sleeping. And so I went straight to the bed store and I bought the most expensive Tempur-Pedic mattress that I could afford. And it was literally up on a thing spinning around with lights on it. And I'm like, yeah, I want that one. And I still have that bed to this day. It was the California King, and it was awesome. Amazing. And I remember thinking, this is for me. I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight. And it was a gift that I bought myself. And so
that's awesome.
Obviously, after that happened, the distance between deal 0 and deal 1, having to go through that learning curve, was a lot longer than the distance between deal 1 and 2. Everything started to condense.
And 2 and 10.
And 2 and 10. And then it just, all those seeds you're planting, all those relationships, all those trial and errors. I've had partnerships fall apart and I've gotten sued and I've sued people and like just all this experience that you learn through doing deals and becoming a deal maker makes it to where obviously I upped my goals and I went from just wanting to make $3,000 a month and being able to quit my job as a bookkeeper and just being able to do real estate full time. I remember getting to a point where I was making 10 grand a month wholesaling houses. Then I'm like, I don't know, this sounds kind of crazy, but could I do 25 grand a month?
Right.
And then you hit that and then it's like 50,
yeah,
100,
right.
And then your thing starts to scale. But I did something that was really smart. And my mentor forced me to do this, is I used my wholesale profits to fund my real estate acquisitions. So if you're listening to this and you want to become a real estate millionaire, you're not that far off. And if you think about it like this, wholesaling, if you've never heard of it, it's the purest form of the no money down deal. It's basically finding homeowners or houses that are distressed. And if you look down the average American street right now, 90% of the houses and the owners that own those houses, they're not motivated to sell at a discount.
Yeah.
They're not going to. Like, if you're not motivated, you're not going to sell at a discount. But there's like 10% on any street that's motivated, going through a divorce, had a death in the family, lost their job, being relocated, medical issues, legal issues, foundational issues, fire, flood,
right.
The house is old and ugly. It's the one on the street that has a flat roof where every other one's pitched roof.
Right.
Some functional obsolescence, something is going on with the property. Those are the types of deals I go after.
Yeah.
And if you are good at marketing, especially nowadays with social media, it's not that difficult to find free or cheap avenues to get out in front of these types of people and get this message that, hey, if you want cash and you want to close quickly, we can help you.
Yeah.
And so we'll show up, we'll work out a deal, we'll put their house under contract. And what most people don't understand is with creative real estate, it's not like traditional real estate where you either hire a real estate agent or you get your license and that's how you make money buying and selling properties for other people. With creative real estate, we're creating the profits by providing a service for other real estate investors. And so once you put a house under contract, what's interesting is you have what's called equitable rights in the property. And all that means is per the contract, you have certain rights to that property. Just like if you signed a contract to rent somebody's property, you now have the right to use the property. Well, if I go to buy your house and I fill out a contract, let's say it's worth $200,000, but I agree to buy it for $150, and you say okay, and I say we'll close in 20 days. Well, during that 20-day period, I kind of control your real estate because technically you shouldn't be able to go sell it to somebody else, right? And so during that 20 days, I kind of have this window to go and shop that paperwork around town to see if anybody else wants to step into my shoes and get it. And that's the concept of wholesaling, is being a real estate middleman or matchmaker. And so once I kind of thought of it like, okay, how many of these types of deals where I find a seller, I negotiate, I put their house under contract, I find a cash buyer, which is a landlord or a rehabber, and I find them and I just put deals together. And in 2019, my average wholesale fee was $11,202, right? So think about this. I'm going to try and get these numbers off the top of my head, but think about this. Let's say you want to become a real estate millionaire in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we do that? Well, if I'm making on average, let's just say $10,000 per wholesale flip, how much real estate how many wholesale deals do I need to do in order to buy real estate to become a real estate millionaire? So let's just work backwards. Let's say you have a house that you could buy for $200,000, but you could buy it for $150, right? Needs work. There's lots of these deals out there.
Yeah.
Okay. If I go to a bank to buy a house for $150, I need 20% down, which is $30,000. All right. So if I'm making 10 grand per wholesale flip, how many wholesale deals do I need to do to get the 30 grand to put the down payment to buy the one house?
3.
I got to do 3. And so that's how simple I started thinking of it. Okay, I got to flip 3 houses real quick, take those profits, go over, put them as a down payment to buy that $200,000 house for $150. Now, what do I have? I have a $200,000 house for $150, but I put 30 grand down. So I have $80,000 in equity in that property.
Yeah.
So I turned 30 into 80 of value
Immediately.
just by that trade-off. Then what else do I have? I now maybe fix it up, maybe I don't. And I put a tenant in there. And let's say I rent it out for $1,500 a month, right? Well, now I'm getting $18,000 a year in cash flow. Right now, I probably have a mortgage that I got to pay off and different stuff, but like I'm getting a certain amount of cash flow coming in. Plus I have depreciation, plus I can write off expenses. There's all this value of owning real estate. Well, if I do 5 of those houses in the course of a year, I now have $1 million worth of real estate off of 15 wholesale deals.
Right.
So I turned 150 grand into $1 million worth of real estate, $400,000 in equity, plus constant cash flow and massive tax benefits.
Yeah. Sign me
Boom. All of a sudden the light bulb went off and I was like, I could do this.
Right.
Because I could do this over here. And this was the gateway to get me here.
Number 1 was the most magical moment, realizing, right? Like understanding like, oh my goodness, this is actually doable. You know, it's not just a concept anymore. I'm not seeing some dude on stage talk about it. I actually cashed a check.
And my first deal was 40 grand. So I didn't even have to do 3 deals.
Yeah,
I could have done 1 deal.
Right.
My biggest wholesale fee in 2019 was $65,000.
Wow.
For 3 hours worth of work.
Crazy.
And I'm not saying you're going to do that because like most people don't.
Proper
like,
expectations.
Most people screw it all up or do like what I did initially, which was quit.
Yeah. Right.
9 months. Imagine going after a goal for 9 months while everybody thinks you're absolutely insane.
Right.
And you're running out of money and you're going into credit card debt.
And that's the crazy part too, is that's why I asked to make sure that it was like the profit on the deal, because you were $30,000 in credit card debt. Your first deal was more than enough to get you out of debt.
Oh yeah.
And get you into your next deal.
Oh yeah.
Right. It sounds like your dad was always really instrumental in giving you the aids that you were looking for to continue going along the path that you wanted to go down. How has that affected your parenting and helped you become to instill the same types of lessons in your kids?
I love that question. Yeah, first off, he was the perfect role model for me. Yeah. Because my son Hudson is identical to how I was.
Really?
But he's even smarter than I was. And it's going to be really interesting to see.
How old is he?
He's 10 right now.
Okay.
He's 10 right now. And it's been so fun as a parent being able to do some of the things that my dad did with me, but take my spin on it and even take it to the next level. So like same concept. You want to create, we're big on language patterns in our house. And we don't have certain words that we say, like we don't use the word can't, that kind of thing. But I'm always talking to him about, okay, you want that? Let's create it. Right? So, doing the same thing with the contracts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll front you the money. Let's go figure out a business model, and I'll work with him on modeling it all out. I bring him with me to all my rehab projects. He's been in a ton of our advertisements. In fact, my best converting ads over the last 4 years have had Hudson in them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen him.
Yeah, and so he's just through exposure and proximity, he's already wheels spinning, wanting to do certain things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he has a challenge that I never had. And it's my challenge too, because I'm trying to teach him the value of hard work and that daddy driving a Lamborghini is not normal. And living in this house is not normal, and what it takes to create this lifestyle and not to be, one of those kids that is entitled.
Totally.
Really difficult
So
for
funny.
me.
I just had the same exact conversation with Dean Graziosi over at his office, talking about the same stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you do to try to make sure that they have that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I'm a member of a local men's group called the Chandler Compadres. We raise millions of dollars every single year for underprivileged kids, all here in Chandler, Arizona. And so I force them to get involved in all of our charity work. And it's not charity work where you just give money. We're going to work.
Yeah.
We're going to deliver food. We're going to prepare food. We're going to deliver presents. We're going to help people, fix their houses up.
Yeah.
It's very hands-on. And so my kids have been very active in that. And there's probably not a month that goes by that we're not doing some kind of service like that back for our local communities, just so they can see
Perspective.
this is how some people have to survive, and
Right.
this is why you're so lucky, and you need to be grateful for all of this stuff.
Right.
And I'm also very strict about electronics around my kids.
Okay.
So my son loves to game. He's a gamer.
Yeah.
Not a football player. He's into gaming.
Yeah.
And so we limit his electronics usage. I won't give my kids a cell phone. They're freaking out because all their friends want and have cell phones.
Of course, yeah.
And we're the
Just give them a flip phone. See how it goes.
Well, we found a phone actually recently that is built for kids. So
Oh, really?
we might
Okay.
try that out once he gets a little older, which all it can do is text and call.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any access to the internet or anything like that.
Man, so good.
It's tough though. If you have anything, because I talk to Dean all the time about this. Me and him are really good friends, and this is pretty much what we don't talk about real estate.
Yeah.
We rarely talk about business. We talk about our families and stuff, and we can go for hours trying to just mastermind, like, how do we pull this off properly? Because that would be the worst failure of my life if my kids don't know how to deal with.
Took everything for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is that you genuinely have to take time on purpose to make sure that they don't feel that way, because if you don't, they'll default to that way because that's just how they grew up, So that's interesting. My son he's 8 months old right now, so that's why I'm starting to ask some of these questions, because I'm very curious on how a lot of other people are going.
Family discussions. We do a Sunday family meeting.
Okay.
Where we sit around a table and it's no holds barred. They can talk about drugs, sex, anything that they are hearing on the bus, anything they hear with their friends, any words. Like we had to cover the other day the word rape. A kid on the bus brought up, and they started screaming the word rape for some reason, and 4 or 5 kids got hauled off into the principal's office, and that opened up the conversation. Well, what is rape?
Yeah.
What is sex? What is this?
Right.
We go down this rabbit hole, and it's like, oh man, 10 years old, that's about the time where they're going to start to get exposed to that. So open-ended family discussions, get that consistent meeting where the kids know, even if they don't want to do it, because the first 10, they hated it. They wanted to do anything but meet. And we'd be like, well, what do you guys want to talk about? Nobody would talk about anything.
Yeah.
But I didn't care, because I just had to get the habit going.
Right. It seems to be a lot about that trust barrier too, because I think that's why a lot of kids go get in trouble, is because they just don't trust that their parents will react in a normal way if they expose them into what they're up to, or what their mind is thinking about, or what their friends were talking about, and they think that all these bad things are going to happen if they're honest with their parents, and it just creates this foundation of mistrust. From what I'm a brand new parent, so I'm not trying to judge anybody or anything, but that's just what I've seen, and something that my wife and I are consciously going to be implementing when our son gets older is just making sure that he trusts us completely. That we're not ever betraying that.
Take them with you.
Man,
Travel with them as much as possible. Just that exposure makes them interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on a little bit here to the education side of what you do. So you start doing a lot of real estate, start flipping a lot of houses, start growing that side of the business. Around what period did you go, you know what, I think I've learned a good enough amount of this to where I could actually probably help people that were in a similar position to where I was, and how did you get into that world?
Yeah, so I became a millionaire by 28, a multimillionaire by 30.
What year is this, by the way?
Jeez Louise, I don't know, 2006-ish.
Okay,
something like
so
that.
Right before it was a bad time to be in real estate.
Oh yeah. I started, once I broke that first deal, the deals started coming. And I rode it up into the crash, I didn't get hurt on the crash because I was quick turning the real estate. And I was also buying them really, really cheap.
Yeah. The deal's good enough. The deal's good enough.
Yeah. I was buying them way below the median. And so once the crash happened, there was this period of like a few months where nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, people started poking their heads back up and realizing, oh man, everything's...
The dust is settling
being
finally.
Fire sold. And I went on this tear. And I probably bought 2,000 houses during the crash. And it was unbelievable. It was Christmas.
08, 09 area time frame?
At the end of 07, it started.
Okay.
I went down to, well, at the time, I was doing short sales and foreclosures and stuff like that. But then I had a friend that said, hey, I just bought a house down at the foreclosure auction. And I hadn't been down there in a long time. And I said, oh, yeah? And he goes, yeah, I paid 19 grand for it. And it was built in 2006. And it was a K-Hove home in the town of Maricopa, which is a little outside of the main, metro area. But it's still, that was a $150,000 house for 19 grand. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I went down to the foreclosure auction and I camped out and I saw all these houses being sold and there was nobody down there at the time, really. There was just the OGs that were always kind of down there. And I showed up the next day with a pen and paper and I started teaching myself the auction business. And so once I figured it out, we just went down there and started buying houses. And then things started to move real quick.
Wow.
I did a couple thousand houses, and in 2010, in 2009, I started developing a software to sell the houses I was buying down at the auction. And at the time, it was pretty cutting edge because nobody was really using text marketing. Nobody was really using direct-to-voicemail marketing technology. And I built this little software that I could take a property and I can create email lists, text lists, and email list and phone number lists, and I can blast off the property to people's emails and to their text and to do what's called ringless voicemail, which now is popular, but back then nobody ever heard of it. And I was selling deals like within seconds of buying them. And everybody, all my competition was like, how are you doing that? And so I get this wild idea that I'm going to sell this software to the world. And that was the birth of Clever Investor. And so many people coming to me saying, how do you do what you do? So in 2010, I started a company. We were going to be part software, part education. It was kind of fulfilling that need within me to be a teacher.
Okay.
And I was really good at real estate at the time. It had now been over 10 years pretty much. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. And I didn't think much of it. It was like a side hustle and it blew up. And within 3 years, Clever Investor became one of the biggest brands in the real estate education space. Yeah. And I started to scale. And next thing I know, I woke up and I had 70, 80 team members.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, this world of being an entrepreneur started to happen. Because as a real estate investor, you're kind of a solopreneur. There's like maybe a small team. It's like very linear. It's not that difficult. But when you have an education company or you actually are building a real business, there's departments and there's processes and there's culture and there's all this infrastructure that has to integrate to pull it off. Yeah. And when you do hit on your business and it starts to scale, you go through these cycles of like in the beginning it's just like sales. Everybody's just making sales. Well, then all of a sudden you got to fulfill all these sales, and it's like, oh my God, I gotta service all these people, and that became really scary, and it stretched my capabilities beyond anything I've ever experienced in the past. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
I was going to say, what are the top 2-3 lessons that you learned in that period?
Probably the most important thing is to pick the right team members and partners. That's probably the number one thing as you're just getting it going, because a lot of people pick complementary or like-minded partners. It's like, we're both A-type personalities, we're both good at sales, let's start a business together. And you actually need the polar opposite of you. And thankfully, I found that in a guy named Matt Lights. And Matt helped me co-found the business, and he was always cleaning up behind me and pulling the operations and the infrastructure together. And that allowed me to thrive in the things that I was good at, which was on the marketing side of things and building the brand and bringing people in for new opportunities and that kind of stuff. So that was really important. I've hired a lot of the wrong people. That you start to develop this habit of hire really slow and fire really fast, that kind of mantra. culture is probably the most important thing within a team. If you screw it up, you're going to know it every second of every day. And if you get it right, you're going to know it.
Yeah. Is there a size limit to that in terms of like, you know, if you're under 10 people, is culture still that important?
I think where people, especially entrepreneurs, screw it up is most teams or companies know what they do, and they're very clear on what they do. We sell real estate software and do education and help people create freedom through real estate. Mm-hmm. Okay, we know what we do. We know how we do it through these trainings and these you know, live events and this other stuff. If you're really good, like Simon Sinek says, you know why you do it. And that's hard sometimes to dig deep and figure out why. And that's the company mantras and
the vision and
mission statements, all that stuff. Where a lot of entrepreneurs fail is figuring out what's in it for the team members if they help you accomplish that. That's that missing piece that a lot of us on the go fail to really just slow down and take the time to really model out, because we're so uncertain of our future because it's all kind of happening fast that we don't know how to even communicate that to one of our team members to say, this is how your life's going to play out over the next 3 years if you help me achieve this big, bold, hairy goal. And the real good entrepreneurs know how to dial that in. And I didn't at the beginning. And I had to learn some of those painful lessons, because you lose good people. You know, regrettable turnover is the worst in a business. Your people and your team are the most important assets you have. And if you screw it up and you lose somebody super valuable, I had my marketing guy get picked off by a competitor, offered him more money, and I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal because we have ego, you know, and you're kind of like, well, find somebody
I taught
else.
him everything he knows anyway.
And I did.
Right.
But 2-3 years of training somebody is invaluable. And when it happened, I felt it immediately. I probably lost $2 million because of that regrettable turnover.
Wow.
And it all has to do with being able to clearly say, this is your path. And this is how you're going to create wealth alongside with me. Because I think you can have a big, bold vision as an entrepreneur, and as an intrapreneur, I can recruit other like-minded people into my business. You can still have a big vision that fits within my vision. And together we get that alignment. And I believe that alignment equals velocity. Without it, the friction causes problems at some point. And what happens when you start making real money and everybody sees that you're making real money, because all of us are dumb entrepreneurs and we all do the same thing with Lamborghinis and nice houses, and so we start traveling, and nowadays with social media, it's like, post the pic. Totally. Well, your team members are watching everything you're doing as an owner. And if you're getting super wealthy and they're struggling to pay their water bill, it's a problem, you know? But if they have a path and it's very clear, and even the customer support person can have a path, you know, maybe there's a limit, but then it's like, hey, with this position, this is your path. But then if you're a player and you play full out and you set standards and you help create systems and processes and you think outside the box and you take care of our students, I'm going to show you these other seats that we could put you in eventually. That's very difficult. It just took a long time for me to slow down enough to figure that out.
Was that just something that you kind of poked around and just failed enough to figure out the right way, like in a maze, you know, or was it resources, mentors, books?
Mentors. You have to ask other people that have already gone through it, because the guy in college I was talking to you about before we started recording, I had one college professor, his name was Dr. Wilt, and he would say this thing to me. He was the only college professor that made an impact on me, and he would say, you need to integrate yourself with people of great wealth. And I never quite understood that. You need to integrate yourself with people of great wealth. And what does that mean? Just money? Like just hang around people with money? Is that just the proximity is power conversation? He didn't just mean money. He meant a wealth of knowledge too. And so I was lucky and smart enough to, because we moved around so much as a kid and I figured out how to influence people, I realized that a large part of getting other people on board with your vision and to help you out is just serving. So I walk into every relationship, how can I serve you? How can I help? And I'll serve for as long as it takes. In exchange, I get proximity. And now I get to ask you these questions when I need you, because you built a successful business. And if I want to learn podcasting, I'm coming to you. Because I want to know, what am I going to walk into? What are those booby traps? And so I had to ask, met a guy who actually founded, his name is Todd Davis. He founded a company called LifeLock.
Okay.
Actually sold it for $2.4 billion.
Yeah, I was going to say the LifeLock.
The LifeLock player, right?
Yeah.
Amazing human being. And so I became friends with him, and just being able to call him and just say, how did you deal with the growth? How did you deal with the culture? How did you raise the money? How did you deal with this? What would you do in this example? Mm-hmm. Having people like that in my corner or on my Rolodex made the world of difference, because it was clear to them.
Yeah, right.
It took them 10 seconds to tell me, do this, this, and this. I would have spent 4 days in a war room with whiteboards all over trying to
and
model
still been
out.
wrong. Yeah. That's it's so funny, because I recently threw my first live event this past November, and in my talk I was talking about that because, like I mentioned, I have an 8-month-old son. At the time he was 4 or 5 months, and he was just starting to figure out how to put his own pacifier in his mouth. It was one of those like stuffed animal ones, the Wubba Nubs. He's like just trying to figure out like where to kind of place it and put it in his mouth. And there was one time he was trying to put the pacifier in his mouth, and it was upside down. The little dog was upside down, and he couldn't figure out that like the leverage was pulling the pacifier up, so he just kind of kept sticking it like in his face, but it wouldn't go in, And I was sitting there watching the whole thing unfold, and it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks about mentors and exactly what you were just talking about, because because of my exponential knowledge comparatively to his knowledge of the world, right? Which I know is a big bragging point, to be that much smarter than my 4-month-old. But to illustrate the point, I know way more about how the world works than my 4-month-old son does. And he was struggling with something that was just so simple. And all I had to do was reach out and flip it upside down and give it back to him, and he would have been totally fine. And I find the same thing to be true of our mentors, is that they just know so much more, that they can look at that problem. Like you said, you're going to take 4 or 5 days with whiteboarded out walls and 17 books and resources in front of you, poring over it to try to figure out the solution to this problem that you have. And you can call up somebody, or you could just call up somebody who's been there, done that, walked through that exact same process, and they could be like, oh yeah, it's this. And you're like, okay, thanks.
1,000,000%.
Just one little tweak.
And as an entrepreneur, you're in the woods.
Yeah.
So you are emotional, you're feeling,
right.
you have this lens that you're looking through. When somebody has that outside perspective, they have that clarity that you don't. It really helps.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second. This is Build Your Network. We talk a lot about networking, relationships, connections, and everything. And I love, I can always tell somebody who has a valuable network of people around them because of what you just said, in terms of like, you're always leading with value. You're always like just looking to give to people. And that's really what differentiates, in my opinion, good networkers and bad networkers. Is, the typical networker is the person who's always looking to take from you and always wants this and always wants that. Whereas somebody like you, who has a really well-rounded network with some amazing people in it, it's because you've always been that person to be like, hey, what can I do to help you? What can I do to serve you? So let's talk about the mentor thing. How do you, Cody, like as an entrepreneur, get somebody who's worth $2 billion to agree to getting on the phone with you once every couple of months or whenever you have a question? How do you even, like, literally, how do you bring up the topic of conversation? Like somebody out there listening that maybe, knows some people, has some contacts, but they've never gotten permission to be able to just call them up and ask them a question or two. Yeah. How do you approach that?
Well, first I would say let's just look at how people actually work and operate, because I think if your expectation is you're a new entrepreneur, you haven't really done much in business yet, you're not going to walk up to a billionaire and say, let's hang out.
Right.
It's not the proximity and the time. People, as they're more successful, they value time way more than anything else. And so the chances of you doing that without it being a family member or somebody walking up and saying, hey, help this person. Because third-party endorsements will get you that.
Yeah, right.
99% of us don't even know one person that's removed from the billionaire type guy.
Right.
And so I would say, I didn't start just walking over to Todd and saying, hey, let's hang out, will you be my mentor, which is what you get on DMs all the time now through social media. It was a evolution and a progression, and it's like when I was broke, living with my girlfriend, and we wanted a house, right? And that was our big dream. So as I started becoming successful in real estate, we were going to go buy our first house. Well, that was like a $250,000 house is what we wanted, right? Well, you get the $250,000 house and you think it's a big deal, and now you're surrounded by $250,000 neighbors, right? And so that's what you're doing, except for the one neighbor across the street, he's got a $600,000 house, and you're kind of like, let's go get to know that guy, right? And then you go see his house, and you're like, man, his house is way better than our house. His friends are different than our friend. Like, we got to hang out. We got to start getting proximity to this person. And then all of a sudden you work and you get enough money to buy the $600,000 house or the $1 million house. And every time I would look across the street, there was always somebody more successful than me that had a different set of friends, different network, and all that stuff. And so it was a progression as I became more successful in business and I started companies or failed at things. I would always identify a couple people in my proximity that were doing better than me. That I would serve and just hang around, but it wasn't like 30 levels up. It was just the next level up. And through those relationships, I slowly worked my way up. And I think a lot of people have this sense where they want everything yesterday, and they feel like, you know, they have to get it done right away. And I think of it like I couldn't be anything else but an entrepreneur. I love real estate so much, and I'm so grateful that I found something that I'm passionate about. But I couldn't be a normal 9-to-5er. It's not in my DNA. I couldn't do it. I'd be a horrible employee.
Yeah, I hear that.
And so for me, it's a lifestyle. And I don't, even when things are tough, and there's a lot of times things are tough. We started off before I even started saying, you know, there's a lot of times if I could snap my fingers and do anything but be an entrepreneur, but I was passionate and great at it, I'd do that because it's so difficult to do what we do at our level and take on the weight and pain and pressure of all the surrounding things that go into being a successful entrepreneur. So I think of it like a marathon. This is my life. I'm just going to take it one step at a time. And if I get in the room where there is somebody where I kind of identify, like I want to have a relationship with that person, I am bold enough to go up to them, and I try to get other people to give me those third-party endorsements, and I try to just introduce myself and just use whatever skills or resources I have to serve them for as long as it takes. And eventually, I start working my way in. The other way to do it is just to cut a check. And I think nowadays there's a lot of masterminds. We're in one together. You know, this is how our relationship is really starting. Is just cutting a check and not thinking of it like, oh man, this is an expense for, you know, my business. This is an investment into the future. And I walk into that room knowing that there's 100 badass entrepreneurs in there. And I don't have expectations. I don't walk in there and go, oh, I know that person, I'm going to get something from them. I know that person, I'm going to get something from them. I walk in and I just say, look, I don't know what's going to come out of this, but it was worth it for me to just put myself in proximity to all these amazing people, and I'm just going to serve every single person in the group, and let's see what happens. And that's how I roll. And when you think of it long term like that, and you have that energy and that attitude, guys like you see it. You know, and now I have an opportunity to hang out with you.
That marathon thinking is really, I think, where the rubber, you know, meets the road, is because I think that's why people don't place a large value on actively building relationships, because they don't see what the immediate ROI is. They don't see, like, you know, well, if I go there in 12 years from now, somebody that I met at this thing is going to introduce me to this one guy that's going to lead to this partnership that's going to bring in $100 million. Like, there's no way to really know what's going to happen or come from a relationship. It's just the faith that if you put goodwill into good people, good things are going to happen. And
you got to be a master of your craft.
Got to be at least competent at what you do.
I think that's the other layer of it, is when you're not competent and you don't have good capabilities, it's very difficult to get power players to take you seriously.
For any length of time anyway. Like, you're going to be exposed in a pretty short amount of time.
Exactly. And so, you know, I live, eat, breathe, sleep marketing and real estate. I do it every second of every day. It's all I think about, like an obsessed maniac. And I study great people, and I study my craft every second of every day. Ask my wife. You know, she's like, dude, you never shut off. And it's like, because I'm obsessed. And when people raise their intensity and their enthusiasm level amongst the crowd of averageness, other people that want more out of life notice that intensity, and then it's like gravity.
And that's a great answer for the mentorship question too. Is I've asked that question to a lot of people that I've talked to, and that's ultimately one of the biggest things, is that they want to see that you're actually willing to do the things that they advise you to do. Because like you said, their time is extremely valuable. And they have so many people that ask them for things all the time. And everybody has the story of when they first started seeing success and somebody asked them for help, and you're just dying to help somebody because you figured something amazing out, and you're just like, oh man, here's exactly what I did. And then 6 months later, hey, did you do that thing? Oh no, this happened, and then this happened, and then this other thing happened. And successful people start to realize right away that not everybody deserves their advice, and not everybody deserves their time. So if you can be one of those people that gets in, becomes good at something, is competent at what you do, or an expert level at what you do, then you're like you said, you're going to start attracting the people that start noticing those things in you, because that's the same exact way that they were when they were at that point in their career, and they can empathize with that situation. They see you taking action, and they want to be a part of the success. People that are successful want to help people. It's just that 99% of people will never do what they actually are told to do, because I don't know what it is. Like, they're risk averse, they have limited mentality, whatever.
Think about the evolution of most people's success. How many times did they get their time wasted?
Yeah. Right.
You just get hardened as an entrepreneur to make people jump through hoops.
Especially realizing the time is really our only asset that we have.
Yep.
Your time is worth so much. You can't just give it away to people who are just going to squander it and go back to working at McDonald's and never wanting to do anything else in their life.
Yep.
So listen, man, we could just keep talking. So if I don't wrap it up, we'll be here for a while. So I got asked this question. Out of the 370 plus episodes we put out, this is the one question I've asked every guest that's come on. Who you know or what you know? Which one of those is more important, and why do you think that?
Who you know, 1,000,000%, without question. I'm not the sharpest tack in the tool shed. Is that what it is? Is that the saying? I don't know. It sounds good. I'll roll with it. One thing I do have is enthusiasm, though. I'm very enthusiastic, and I'm passionate about the things that I'm into, and who you know is vitally more important. Like Dr. Wilt said, integrate yourself with people of great wealth. Yeah. Wealth of knowledge, wealth of relationships, wealth. Yeah.
Right,
and so it's opened up more doors. Masterminding and just being around other power players has opened my eyes, pushed me beyond any, limits that I've ever had. And I still find myself, every opportunity I ever get, if I could put myself in a room where I'm sweating and I'm nervous and I don't want to talk, even when I was at the 100 Mil Mastermind, introducing yourself, it's like you go blank and you're like, totally. Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
Totally.
And that's such a great feeling to know that, man.
That's the right room to be in.
Yes, right. And things are about to change, because otherwise, my friends, the people I'm comfortable around, the reason that they're such good friends is, because I'm comfortable around them,
Right.
But if I start hanging out with people at a couple levels up, I start getting real nervous, and it's like, oh man, here comes the next level of life. And,
you're either forced to level up or get out. Ultimately is what happens. Yeah. Right? You're either forced
You're exposed. You're
right.
exposed to a higher set of principles.
Yeah.
Which is just a nice way of saying rules, right? There's a higher set, and that's all.
Standard of living.
Life is literally a game, and if you think about the gamification of the whole thing with business and in life, it's just how many times can I keep getting exposed to the next set of rules, and that exposure then builds your capabilities. Then for a while you master them, and then finally you get exposed to the next layer. Right. You can't jump 4 steps. You got to go one at a time. And that's why I would say who you know, because what you know will come. And what you don't know can be offset by who you know.
Yeah. And as long as you got that competence, right, like we talked about, like if you have that level of competence, or at least ambition or hard work, whatever combination of that is, I think that the people that you get around, you'll always learn more from them than you will a book anyway.
The quality that you can't teach.
Yeah, right.
Ambition.
Totally. Yeah. So, moving on, last segment here, man. Like I said, I got to get you out of here. Last segment, random round, just a few quick random questions, quick random answers. Ready?
Okay.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would just be fun to attempt?
Ooh, fun to attempt. I think being an actor would be really cool.
Yeah.
I would love to be a good actor, not like a porn actor, like a real good actor, right? Could I be like a Tom Hanks caliber
if you want
actor?
Viewership, though, I mean, porn might be the way to go.
I definitely would not be a good porn actor. It'd be so awkward. Everybody would just shut it off.
Yeah. If you could sit on a park bench with someone, past or present, chat for an hour, who would it be?
That's tough for so many reasons. I'd want to sit down with my dad's dad. He passed away when he was 13.
Wow.
I would probably sit down with him. I know that the answer everybody wants to hear is, some, Bill Gates style type guy. But I would love to talk to my dad's dad.
Yeah.
He's super interesting to me.
Give us a glimpse of your morning routine.
I wake up every single morning without an alarm clock. Haven't had one in, 25 years. Get up probably right around 4:50, 5-ish, right around 5 a.m. I get up, I slam some water, I throw on my workout clothes, I make some shakes and protein type stuff, and then I go to the gym. I hit the gym hard. I have a personal trainer because I'm lazy otherwise, and I need that accountability in my life and that push. And I also I waste too much time at the gym if I don't have somebody just moving me from process to process. And so I do that. Then I make sure I get back early enough. I don't check news. I don't really check my phone. I don't do any social, any of that stuff. I come back. I probably do a little bit of meditation and grateful time. And then I make breakfast for the kids. I get them off to school. Then I put on my suit and I go to war.
How do you like to consume content? Books, audiobooks, blogs, podcasts, or videos?
Videos for me.
Okay.
I do listen to a lot of audios. I can't stand reading physically. It drives me crazy. I go to sleep. Yeah, but I like video or audio.
What is your go-to pump-up song?
I like 90s hip hop.
Yeah.
So probably Notorious.
Got it.
B.I.G., something like that.
Juicy.
Juicy.
Putting business aside, what would be something that you're just not very good at?
Math.
Just
Anything that has to do with math. Writing. I'm horrible at spelling.
You're bad with math unless there's a dollar sign in the front.
Yeah, I can figure that kind of stuff. Horrible at spelling. No, I'm very spatially oriented. I'm not good with, long processes that take a really long period of time. Like I think writing a book would be very difficult for me. I've written a book, but it was a real estate book.
Yeah.
But I would have a hard time with that. I would need to bring in some reinforcements.
Totally, yeah. As we get everything wrapped up here, what is one place online where we can find you active the most?
One place, the place I want you to go is YouTube because I'm putting the most energy into that lately.
Okay.
I'm probably most well known for my Instagram.
Okay.
I have 1 million+ followers on Instagram, so a lot of people follow me there, and I post every single day on Instagram, but I'm putting a ton of love and energy into YouTube. I wish I would have done it years earlier, so at Clever Investor on YouTube.
Cool.
If you want to learn real estate investing, that's the main channel focus.
Cool. Awesome. Anything you want to hear about Cody, head over to @CleverInvestor on YouTube and on Instagram if you're over on Instagram as well. That's it. That's all I got for you, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. I had a fantastic time chatting.
It was
with you.
amazing. Thank you
so much
so
good
much.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Can't wait till next time.